Good morning, and welcome to the Vashon Island Unitarian Universalist. My name is Donna Klemke, and I'm privileged to be your service leader today. If you're visiting, please participate as you feel comfortable, and you're invited to stay and introduce yourself in conversation at the end of the service. We always have wonderful treats over there. Our congregation is committed to individual freedom of belief, welcomes diversity, seeks to promote a sense of community, and fosters religion which enriches the spirit. We're mostly a lay-led community, strengthened and enriched by our volunteer contributions, but we're very fortunate to have the support and guidance of our minister, Reverend Victoria Poling, and she's here on the second Sunday of every month. So please join us next Sunday so you can meet her and experience her wisdom. As we begin our service, please take a couple of breaths to become fully present. Relax and bring your attention into this moment of communal reflection and sharing. We acknowledge that we're on the traditional homelands of the Swabash Coast Salish Native people. The Puyallup people have lived on and stewarded these lands since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We recognize that this land acknowledgement is one small step towards true allyship, and we commit to uplifting the voices, experiences, and histories of the indigenous people of this land and beyond. As Unitarian Universalists, we honor the interdependent web of all existence, and we covenant to cherish the earth and all beings by creating and nurturing relationships of care and respect. With humility and reverence, we acknowledge our place in the great web of life, and we work to repair harm and damaged relationships. I'd like to invite Tish and Mark to come up and invite us with our chalice lighting.
Good morning. Know This by Chad A. Snyder. We truly know far less than we think we do. But let us know this much. In our joy, in our loss, in our quiet daily, blessed, ordinary moments, we are not alone. A small truth maybe, in a vast and rapid world, but let us hold that truth and trust it as we hold and trust the joys, the sorrows, and moments shared in this space we make holy.
We're very lucky today to have Reverend Carrie Kopnick. She's been here several times, and she serves as the community minister and acting executive director of the Chaplaincy Institute, an interfaith seminary and community based in Berkeley, California. She grew up as a Unitarian Universalist and served in UU institutions for 20 years before stepping beyond the bounds of UUism and being ordained as an interfaith minister. She lives in Kent, where she tends a bossy charm of hummingbirds and an elderly, deaf, old lady dog who owns her whole heart. She's been married to her beloved spouse for 37 years and has 3 grown sons and 3 precious daughters-in-law. She loves this congregation and is honored to be with you again, and Carrie will be obviously speaking right now.
Thank you. Our opening words this morning are called I Trust. I trust that my heart knows the way. I trust my will to hold. I trust that I am to go. I trust that this is the way. I trust that the obstacles will move or be scalable. I trust myself. I trust spirit, the trees, the oceans, the sky, and the stars. I trust the way. And now please rise in body or spirit if you'd like, and we'll sing hymn number 391 in your gray hymnal. 391 is called Voice Still and Small.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calling my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing. Voice still and small, I hear you call, I hear you call, singing. In dark and rain, sorrow and pain, still you remain, singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years, singing.
This reading is called To This God Devotion by M. Jade Kaiser. What I mean by God is bread for everyone, is shared rage at cruelty, is attention where it's needed, is grief held in community, is blooming uninhibited, is water flowing freely, is children at ease, is mystery and magic, is how trustworthy the rising, collective and determined, powered by love, rooted in truth and sharing in risk.
When a night bird sings, the wind blows still, and I lean across my windowsill, hoping to catch a note that will abide with me. I never spied him on the tree, his markings, they are unknown to me, but he warbles so courageously till the break of dawn, and his song thrills every bone, such sweetness in his tone, a song he sings to you alone if you're listening. So pull your chair up by my side, and perhaps our trembling voices might take wing, and like the night birds sing. When first I heard the night bird sing, I was just a wild and speechless thing. My voice was just a murmuring inside of me. nights would come and love had struck me deaf and dumb. I searched for a tune that somehow would not come to me. When from far away I heard a cry, missed the footsteps of the passers-by. A flash of feathers caught my eye, and a bird took wing. I heard the night bird sing, and I marked it well, and I listened till the morning broke the spell to hear the night bird sing. If the night bird sings his song once more, I'll make my heart an open door. Now I know he's come here for me to let him in. He chimes but once at most men's gates. Some don't listen until too late. Others believe but still may wait in vain for him. In a darkened wood, in a silent plain, in a land where no mistakes are made, and only perfect tunes are played. If there are such things, I see the night bird perched, and I mark it well. Listen till the morning breaks the spell to hear the night bird sing.
I feel like I should sit down and we should just listen all morning. That was beautiful. Thank you. It's so good to be with you again. I think some of you know that this feels like home to me. I grew up in a tiny little fellowship, and so when I come here, I feel like I'm coming home. It smells like coffee brewing, and I hear the fun people talking. So thank you so much for having me back. I just finished reading the Book of Hope by Jane Goodall. And if you haven't read it yet, get it on audiobook from the library and listen, because she narrates it with Doug Abrams, I think. And she says she never reads a speech. She always speaks from notes because she wants to connect with her audience. So if you'll bear with me, I'm going to try, since I'm home here, I'm going to try that with you. But if I go long, wave your arms and say, okay, enough, Carrie. We want our snacks. So bear with me. And some of you have probably heard this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. I grew up attending a little tiny fellowship in Bloomington, Minnesota, called the Minnesota Valley UU Fellowship. It was a plant during the fellowship movement, and it was actually done by First Universalist in Minneapolis. They literally did a church plant and supported them getting started because they wanted to serve the growing southern suburbs. So this was intended to be a very lay-led congregation, guided by its own programming. It was very heady, very intellectual, identified very much as a secular humanist congregation, which suited my mother well because she was a fierce atheist. So in the late 70s, or maybe even earlier, the UUA had an extension minister program. So they would send ministers out. Yeah, some of us remember. They would send ministers out to small congregations. And now I don't know if it was a glut of seminarians who they needed to get through full fellowship or final fellowship, they called it then, or if it was, I don't know, it was a different world back then in the 70s. But my congregation had an extension minister in 1979, and that was the first time I'd ever seen a minister or heard a minister preach. Yeah, and so I sat in the pews, because we had pews. We had a a cross up front that was covered by a beautiful hanging, because it was some Presbyterian church or something before, a steeple with nothing on it. It was funny. So I sat in that pew, though, and I listened to that minister, and I thought, that's what I am. That's what I am. That's who I am. It was like being lifted out of that pew. But the years went by, and I went on through the 80s as a teenager and a young adult. I went to a large research university as a philosophy major because I didn't know any better, but I thought that's how you prepared to go to seminary. Along the way in those young adult years, though, I had some deep mystical experiences, times where there was a deep connection beyond self. I paddled for 6 weeks in Manitoba, 400 miles to Hudson Bay, and there were moments of expansion that I couldn't explain, on a lake with a disappearing horizon, or paddling by giant waterfalls, portaging a canoe over rocky outcrops, falling off the Canadian Shield so there were no more trees, eagles soaring on the currents, the wind. And I knew I had an awakening that this wasn't all there was, that there was something more, that we were all connected, the eagles, the rocks, and the rivers. It connected me in a way that I realized I had always experienced, but I didn't have a name for it. So as that clarity came, I could see that it had always been. Over the years, as this became a part of my everyday reality, I began to call this experience of unitive oneness God. My mother was very upset because she had raised me to be a good atheist, and she couldn't believe that there I was talking about God. But here I was, a minister in waiting. Also, just not sure how you went to seminary in your 20s to be a minister with so little life at your back. So I got married, and I had 3 beautiful children. Eventually we moved to Seattle, and I became a director of religious education just across the water at VashonIslandUU in West Seattle. That was the path that I had seen every woman minister that I knew take. I loved the work. I loved being in the pulpit every Sunday. I loved telling the stories. I loved the children. I loved the families. I loved it all. Eventually, I went on to work at the Church of the Larger Fellowship in family ministry and online learning. Later, I worked for the Professional Association for Religious Educators, LREDA. And then I had a big event happen in my life, a big rift, a big chasm open with a family member. I was waiting at the airport to fly home, and I had a kind of a bolt of clarity come to me. It was a clarity of heart and soul, but also like my vision became clear. And I realized it was time to go to seminary. That there was no good reason, there was no money. I had 2 kids in college. I lived in Southern California at the time, where it's not cheap to live. But it was time, and I had to go. Now, that wasn't a true space crane move. Talk about that in a minute. I wasn't yet picked up and moved from one part of my life to another, but it was close. Who knows the movie Toy Story? Yeah, either grandkids or your own kids or your childhood growing up. The Pixar movie, Toy Story, I went to high school with the director of Toy Story, with Pete Docter, and Woody looks just like he looked at 16. I know. In this story, if you don't know, the toys come to life when Andy, their boy, or his parents aren't in the room, and they have this whole community with each other. Eventually, a new toy comes in, Buzz Lightyear, and he doesn't think he's a toy. He thinks he's really a spaceman, and he needs to get home. So, long story short, they wind up at one of those big arcades like Chuck E. Cheese called the Pizza Palace, and Buzz sees a spaceship game, And he thinks, oh, I've got to go commandeer that ship to go home to Sector 12 or whatever. And so he jumps in and climbs up into the toy, but it's one of those cranes where you put your token in and you move the crane and you pick up the toy and you drop it in the chute. That's what has happened to me. I have felt like I have been picked up, moved, and set down in a place that I didn't know I was meant to be. And what I've come to understand is that claw moves in my life as the universe, as energy, as vibration, as the divine. Now, raised to be a good atheist, this was not part of what I expected to be my theology. I think it's called divine providence, divine transcendence, the immanent, I-M-M-A-N-E-N-T, immanent presence of God doing work, acts in the world. I never told my mother this, but she would have shaken her head. But this was like coming to realize that this was moving me in my life, was like that awakening I had as a child, realizing that this connection, this unitive oneness, could also be known as the divine, as spirit, as God. Once I understood that I felt this moving in my life, I could identify other times that I had been called, moved, set in a place I did not know was exactly where I needed to be. So as that awareness grew, it became more clear when those things were happening. In 2020, pre-vaccine, I was working as a chaplain in a hospital, and I loved it. I had no idea that I would love it. I went to seminary I knew I didn't want to be a congregational minister, and so that's why I didn't pursue UU seminary, but I felt a call to tend to families, because being a DRE, a religious educator, and raising my own young kids, I saw how hard it was for families to get to church on a Sunday morning. But I also saw how it expanded children and families, but children's lives, to have some spiritual growth, to have some spiritual tending. So I thought I was uniquely suited to bring that kind of ministry beyond the church walls to families and to children. I didn't know how that was going to play out in my ministry, but that's what I intended to do when I went to seminary. Part of our training at the Chaplaincy Institute is to do some hands-on chaplaining, where you go out in the world and you learn how to be a chaplain, you intern someplace. I chose to do a formal clinical pastoral education unit, or CPE. So I did this at St. Joe's in Tacoma. And I found that I absolutely loved it. My first overnight in the hospital, I had in the emergency department a stabbing, a shooting, a fall while incarcerated, and a car accident. And that was a, that was a first day. And, but I loved it. And I found that one of the things that we're taught at CHI is to listen in three voices. So you listen to your own inner voice, you listen to the person you're with, and you listen for the voice of the divine, what is moving beyond you. And I could see when I met with people, when I sat with people, that they felt that. They felt held, they felt seen, they felt heard beyond, in kind of an infinity loop of connection beyond just the two of us or the five of us or whatever sitting there. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved the nights in the emergency department, even though it was sometimes just heartbreaking. I could see that I made a difference. I blessed babies that were newborns. I stood with people when they got really bad news. I prayed with people in the waiting room, even when they were in full Trump regalia. It didn't matter. It was wonderful. And so I thought, this is what I saw in myself. This is what I'm called to be. This is what I've been waiting for since that day that I saw that first minister. After my ordination, I was invited to be a chaplain resident, to learn for a year with this clinical pastoral education at St. Joe's. And then I was invited to train to be an educator somebody that trains the chaplains in the healthcare institution. I started my residency and I soaked in the learning, and I doggy voices are holy, don't worry. Dogs and kids are welcome. I soaked in the learning. I loved the learning. I felt that I was where I belonged. It was everything that I wanted, until it wasn't. There came a point in my work that I could see that one vector of COVID transmission was staff to patients. I was going from the emergency department to the NICU, and eventually I could not make my body go into patients' rooms. I could simply not do it. I could not make my feet walk into rooms, and so I had to leave. And I felt like I had lost my call, like I was abandoned. I felt like God had abandoned me. I felt bereft, but I had to. The morning after I had my last day at the hospital, I called the executive director at the seminary that I had attended. I had worked as a student. I had spent some time doing some marketing for them because I have a background in that too. That's a whole other story. So I called him and I said, I've got some time on my hands. What can I do to help? And he was quiet for a beat or three. And then he said, the community minister resigned last night. And a bolt went from above my head, out my toes. As the claw, it had moved. It chose who would stay and who would go. And I absolutely felt that claw. I had been picked up and I had been moved to a place that I belonged. And I had to trust. I didn't have a choice. The trust was moving beyond me. And it wasn't that healthcare chaplaincy had been wrong. It was that healthcare chaplaincy had prepared me to walk through seminary with people who were training to be chaplains. I was named the acting community minister, and then I was installed as the community minister. A big part of that role is building a container for people as they walk through as they move through answering their call to ministry. You make a place that's safe for them to answer the call, to live into their ministry. And when I talk to our students, I tell them that we are there to love them into their ministry. I don't know how I knew to say that. I don't know how I know to do some of the things that I do as the community minister, but it moves through me, and I trust. A couple of years into the work, one of the new clergy said to me, Carrie, you were made for this. And it felt like I was. I feel like I was. And then a few months ago, almost 5 years after that claw had chosen where I would go, here it came again. The Chaplaincy Institute hit some really rough financial times. The hits came from all over. There was downsizing after downsizing and scraping the money together. The managing director decided that she had to leave. I think we broke her health. And the board asked if I would step into the leadership role. And I said, absolutely not. I dove under those other toys in the game, and I said, I'm not going to be the fall guy. I cannot do this work. This is impossible. I would keep being the community minister. I would do the marketing because I know how to do that. I would fundraise, but I was not going to step into leadership. And then a church that we used to meet in Berkeley, could no longer sustain ministry, and they decided to close their doors. They had about 20 or 30, they tell me, worthy organizations that they decided between for who they would bequeath their money to when they sold their building in a beautiful area of Berkeley. The congregation voted for 5 institutions, and it was unanimous that we would get some of that money. And it was $84,000. I told the board president that angels are real and miracles happen, and I would be happy to be the acting executive director. And I was picked up and moved into a role that I was meant to do. I love this work. I love having a say in what happens. I love not having to ask permission, but saying, here's what I see, here's where we'll go. Our enrollment is way up. Our donations are through the roof. The bequest arrived a few weeks ago, and it wasn't $84,000, it was $98,000. We found $7,000 in a fundraising account that we'd neglected to transfer to the bank. I texted the board treasurer, and he said, you can't make this stuff up. We got connected to a bookkeeping firm that was founded by a Pakistani American who had an insurance business and found that he needed bookkeeping, so he opened an office in Pakistan where they employ Christians, because Pakistan's a Muslim nation, and women and queer folks, and they run it like an American office. And for them, a really good wage is $10 an hour. So our books are in really good shape. We can see who we need to pay. We can bill people so we get income on time. I wasn't looking for something else. I didn't know all of this was going to happen. But here I am, trusting what's right. I'm not by nature a risk taker. When I go hiking, I carry 3 jackets with me, one for sun, one for rain, one for cold. My purse is basically a first aid kit. When I visit someplace for the first time, I find the exits just in case. But these things I trusted. They were beyond me. I truly felt like I got picked up and set down just where I was supposed to be. I trusted that the next step I would take, my foot would land on solid ground even though I couldn't see where I was going. I wondered when I became the community minister, would I be able to lead a ceremony that for some people is the most important day of their life? Well, yes, I could, and I can, and I do, and I will again on May 3rd because we can't afford a community minister. Would I be able to manage the finances? I'm a minister. I don't have a big financial background. Would I be able to manage the finances as the executive director? I can learn enough QuickBooks to stumble around in there and not muck things up, but to see who we've paid and who we need to pay. Yes, I can, and I do. So how do we trust? How do we trust that knowing? It's not a pros and cons list. It's not thinking or analyzing. It's not a decision rubric. For me, it is feeling my body, letting my body lead, letting my soul go, and letting whatever that still small voice within is that's connected to all, that senses the vibrations in the universe, letting that still small voice guide me. It's not a let go and let God thing, though. I did just get a certificate in nonprofit management at the University of Washington, mostly because I wanted to understand how I had been looking at nonprofit budgets for 20 years, but I didn't see that we were $75,000 in debt at the Chaplaincy Institute. So I got that nonprofit leadership management certificate. Before I became the community minister, I was an ordained minister. So it's not that I haven't done my part. And something else is moving. There was always a place where I could have said, oh no, and I probably did some things. I could have said, oh no, I'm happy here. I can make this work. This is enough. I'm not ready for change or for this move. But I had to trust. I had to trust my body and my deep inner knowing. I had to trust the nudge of the universe. The energy that surrounds us all can sometimes lead the way. And it's so much more than intellectual understanding. And at the same time, I understand it more deeply than I can ever explain. What about you? Have you had this knowing? Have you taken a step that didn't make any sense, maybe? Have you been picked up by the space crane? Have you been called into a trust that was undeniable, that was beyond knowing with mind, but it was knowing with body? I'm going to invite you to take a moment here and place your hand on your heart or your belly or your neck, whatever is comfortable, if it's available. Feel your breath flow in and flow out. And listen with your very heart. Listen with your soul. Feel your energy. Feel the energy around you. Is there a tug or a nudge or a call? You might choose to trust your knowing, to trust your body, to trust the universe, to trust spirit. Maybe not today, but maybe doing dishes or going for a walk, a knowing will come to you, a clarity of vision and a clarity of feeling. If it does, I invite you to trust. Let's rub our hands together a little bit to remember that trust. Let it sink into your soul. Remember, remember. When I am explaining to our ordinands at their ordination ceremony the meaning of the stole that we place over their shoulders as they accept the yoke of ministry, I explain to them that that's an outward symbol of their agreement, the decision that they've made to make themselves available, to answer the call, to say yes to spirit and to the universe, to say, here I am, I'll go, send me. And you can do this if you'd like. You can trust. You can say yes to spirit, universe, trees, goddess. You can say yes to spirit and to the universe. You can say, here I am, I'll go, send me. And who knows where that might lead, where that call may take you, where that call may take us. And as we answer, as we trust, we can remember that we are not alone. We are held in the arms of love. We are held in community. We're never alone. And we can trust to infinity and beyond. Let's take a moment and let's do that with our hands again. Rub our hands together. It's a somatic healing practice. May you trust yourself. Thank you, friends. And now let's sing together from our gray hymnal number 402. From you I receive.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
No, I know. I'm going to try to find. Yeah, no, I'm going to read again what Reverend Carey read before her sermon. If you can't tell by now, our monthly theme is trust. And I guess it's the opening words that Reverend Carey read. I trust that my heart knows the way. I trust my will to hold. I trust that I am to go. I trust that this is the way. I trust that the obstacles will move or be scalable. I trust myself. I trust spirit, the trees, the oceans, the sky, and the stars. I trust the way. So we'll now pause the recording.
There is a love holding me. There is a love on all that I love. There is a love holding all. I rest in this love. There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love.
We also rest in Kat's music. I seriously don't think I've ever heard us sing as well as we have today. So thank you, Kat. We're going to resume recording. Runa, are there any? All right, thank you very much. As members and friends of the Vashon Island Unitarian Universalists, we commit to supporting our congregation. Financial resources to help us to pay our speakers and staff, support our social justice programs, and maintain our building. So please support VIUU with your pledges and offerings so that we'll continue to be a vital community. We engage beyond our walls for peace, social, and economic justice, freedom of belief, and protection of our planet and our inhabitants. And today's offering supports our beloved community. So will the greeters come? And while they're passing the baskets, Kat will lead us in We Give Thanks, which is also, the words are also inside the front cover of the hymnal.
We give thanks for this precious day, for all gathered here and those far away, for the time we share, love and care. We give thanks for this precious day. Oh,
We're sharing a book today, so we might not know when to come up. Our closing reading today is from someone who we at the Chaplaincy Institute call Saint Mary, Mary Oliver. And it's about a little dog named Percy. It's called, I Asked Percy How I Should Live My Life. Love, 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 says Percy, and hurry as fast as you can along the shining beach, or the rubble, or the dust. Then go to sleep with your body heat and your beating heart. And then trust.
In the small moments, may we remember that trust, like love, grows in small moments, in promises kept and confidences held, in boundaries respected and amends made, in showing up again and again. May we be brave enough to risk trust, patient enough to build it slowly, and gentle with ourselves and others when it breaks. Amen.
So they left me room to sing another song. The first one was written by a gentleman named Mark Simos. I didn't tell you that before playing it. And I muffed the words. It's actually much better than what I gave you. I may do the same with this one, but it just feels right. It was written long ago by a magnificent, lovely English woman named Anne Lister, and it's called Icarus. This has been wonderful today. Mara, I had a cat that was a coloratura. So, with a dance therapist, I wish they could have met. She really was. I never wanted to fly high. I was too fond of walking, but when you said you touched the sky, I thought it was your way of talking, but then you said you'd build some wings. You found out how it could be done, but I was doubtful of everything. I never thought you'd reach the sun. And you were so clever with your hands. I'd watch you for hours with the glue and the rubber pens, the feathers, the lace and the flowers, and the finished wings. They glowed so bright, like some bird of glory. I began to envy your flight, like some old hero story. And you tried to get me to go with you. You tried always to dare me, but I looked at the sky so blue. I thought the height would scare me, but I carried your wings for you. Up the path into the cliff face, kissed you goodbye and watched your eyes, already bright with sunlight. And it was so grand at the start to watch you soaring higher, but there was a pain deep in my heart. Your wings seemed tipped with fire, and then I saw your white wings fail, saw the feathers falter, and watched you drop like a ball of gold into the wide green water. Some are born to fly high, some are born to follow, some are born to touch the sky. Some walk in the hollow, but when I saw your body fall, I knew really you had won, for your grave was not the earth, but the reflection of the sun. I never wanted to fly high.
Boy, I wish we could just sit here in silence. Thank you, Kat. We're at the end of the formal service, and we're at the time for announcements to share if you have one to make for a VIUU activity. So please come up.